The early morning fog clung to the rolling grounds of Fort Liberty Military Academy, shrouding the sprawling campus in a muted gray veil. Cadets shuffled across the parade grounds, boots clicking in unison against the stone-paved paths. The familiar rhythm of morning drills echoed off the dormitories and training halls. Among the disciplined chaos, all eyes eventually turned to a new figure making her way across the courtyard. Tall, composed, and deliberately understated in every movement. Her name was Samantha Walker, though most would come to call her simply Sam. Her arrival had gone almost unnoticed at first. She carried a simple duffel bag over her shoulder, wearing a standard academy uniform that seemed almost too loose, her sleeves neatly rolled. The academy had seen countless transfer students over the years, most blending in as eager recruits or overly confident prodigies. But there was something different about Sam, an invisible weight to her presence, a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention, yet commanded it. Her piercing green eyes scanned the grounds with a precision that made casual onlookers uneasy. They didn't know it yet, but Sam was not an ordinary cadet. She was a Navy SEAL combat expert, attending the academy under a covert Pentagon directive, tasked with observing the behavior, ethics, and leadership skills of young cadets. As she approached the main administrative building, a small group of senior cadets lingered nearby, their smirks almost predatory. Blake Turner, the unofficial leader of the group, adjusted the brim of his cap and nudged his friend. "Looks like we've got a soft one," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "She's new, probably has no idea what she's walking into. Easy target." His friends chuckled, exchanging glances of mischievous anticipation. They were seasoned in hazing traditions and considered themselves the ultimate gatekeepers of Fort Liberty's hierarchy. Sam's expression remained neutral, even serene. She ignored the whispered comments and the subtle stares. She could sense the cadets' intentions, the judgment, the assumptions, the eagerness to dominate. It was all second nature to her now, a skill honed from years of field operations and tactical training. She cataloged every detail silently, the cadets' body language, their tone of voice, the nervous energy masking their arrogance. Nothing escaped her notice, and nothing fazed her. Inside the administrative hall, Colonel Reeves was already reviewing the day's schedule. A veteran of decades of service, he had seen his share of new cadets. Yet, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something about this particular transfer student was unusual. He had received a cryptic note from the Pentagon. A special candidate was being placed in the academy under observation. The identity was classified, even to him. He did not know it was Sam. All he knew was that someone extraordinary would be walking among the cadets, testing the academy's culture, the students' leadership skills, and their response to stress. Back outside, Sam's first moments in the courtyard did not go unnoticed. Eli Martinez, a second-year cadet with a reputation for being cautious and observant, caught sight of her. He noticed her posture, the calm determination in her stride. Unlike most cadets, Eli didn't jump to conclusions. There was something about her that felt different. He frowned, curiosity piqued. Unlike Blake and his crew, he did not immediately assume weakness. The first week began like any other. Morning drills, classroom sessions, and the ever-present pressure to perform physically and mentally. Sam moved with quiet precision, excelling in tasks without drawing attention. She ran the obstacle courses faster than anyone else, handled her training weapon with an almost supernatural accuracy, and completed tactical exercises flawlessly. Yet, she never boasted or challenged anyone openly. To the casual observer, she was competent, yes, but not extraordinary. To those with a keener eye, something about her was unnervingly exact. Meanwhile, Blake and his group began whispering among themselves. "She's too calm," one muttered during a break in the training yard. "There's something off about her. Nobody's that chill on day one." Blake scowled, a glimmer of annoyance flickering in his eyes. Doesn't matter. She's still the new girl. We'll see how long that composure lasts. The group made plans, subtle at first, misplacing her gear, teasing her during meals, small pranks meant to test her resolve. Sam noticed every gesture, every whispered plan, every sly glance. She didn't react, not yet. It wasn't about revenge. It was about observation. She catalogued strengths and weaknesses, moral boundaries and tendencies, noting who led with arrogance and who hesitated when given an opportunity to harm. Eli caught glimpses of her observation, noting the keen awareness in her eyes. Even he, an empathetic cadet, couldn't fully grasp the depth of her skills. By the third day, tension began to build. Blake escalated his pranks, placing obstacles in her path during physical exercises and whispering rumors to other cadets about her supposed weaknesses. Yet Sam navigated each challenge effortlessly. She moved like water around obstacles, never out of fear, but out of calculated strategy. Her movements were fluid, precise, controlled, a silent display of mastery that unsettled the onlookers without them fully realizing why. The cafeteria offered a different stage. Cadets exchanged meals, laughter, and gossip. Blake's group tried subtle intimidation, sliding a tray close to hers, bumping into her deliberately, testing patience. Sam ignored the provocations, but noted who joined in, who hesitated, and who merely observed. Her analysis was quiet but thorough. By the time the lunch period ended, she had mapped out the social hierarchy of the cadets, understanding exactly who could be trusted and who thrived on cruelty. By the end of her first week, Sam had already proven her competence without anyone truly noticing. She had integrated seamlessly, yet remained an enigma. Cadets whispered, questioning her abilities, debating whether she was clever or just lucky. Blake's irritation grew as his assumptions were challenged silently with every flawless maneuver she executed. As she retired to her dorm that evening, Sam allowed herself a brief smile. The first phase of observation was complete. The cadets had shown their colors, and she had cataloged everything. She was here not only to train, but to assess, to measure the leadership potential, moral compass, and character of everyone around her. Tomorrow, the games would escalate, and the cadets would soon learn that the quiet new girl they underestimated was a force none of them could ignore. Outside, the fog rolled across the parade grounds again, mirroring the calm before the storm. Unknown to everyone at Fort Liberty, the real challenge had just begun, a test of skill, ethics, and courage that would push every cadet to the edge. And at the center of it all was Samantha Walker, the SEAL combat expert who no one suspected, quietly preparing to reveal just how wrong they were about her. The sun rose over Fort Liberty Academy, casting long shadows across the training yard. Cadets lined up for morning drills, their boots pounding rhythmically against the hard-packed earth. Samantha Walker, or Sam as she was now informally called, moved with quiet efficiency, her uniform perfectly aligned, her posture straight but relaxed. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. She was calm, almost unnaturally so, and the subtle aura of competence she radiated made some cadets uneasy, particularly Blake Turner and his close-knit group of upperclassmen. Blake had spent the night plotting. He and his friends had decided that the new girl needed a welcome, a harmless prank, they told themselves. Something to test her resolve, to remind her that she was new, inexperienced, and out of her depth. The plan was simple. Swap her training gear with inferior equipment, spill a small amount of water near her sleeping area, and see if she lost composure during morning exercises. Nothing extreme, of course, just enough to bruise her ego. When the cadets approached the dormitory, they found Sam already awake, stretching lightly in the common room. She didn't notice their hushed whispers or smirks. She was focused on her routine. To the untrained eye, she appeared vulnerable, unaware of the brewing mischief. Blake nudged his friend, whispering, "Watch this." She cracked under pressure. The first prank began subtly. A water bottle tipped over near her shoes, leaving the floor slick. Her duffel bag had been switched with a slightly smaller, less organized one. Cadets stifled their laughter as they crept away, expecting a dramatic reaction. But Sam simply adjusted her bag, wiped her shoes, and continued her morning routine without a word. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the source of the disturbance, just long enough to record the details, but not enough to reveal awareness. By mid-morning, the pranks escalated. Blake and his crew decided to tamper with her gear for the obstacle course. They loosened straps, hid equipment, and whispered suggestions to other cadets to subtly obstruct her path. Yet, when Sam stepped onto the course, she moved as though nothing had changed. She navigated each obstacle with a grace and speed that startled even the seasoned cadets. Rope swings, climbing walls, balance beams, all were handled flawlessly, her body moving with controlled power that betrayed years of combat training. Eli Martinez, observing from the sidelines, felt a strange mixture of awe and guilt. Unlike Blake, he didn't enjoy seeing others manipulated or humiliated. Watching Sam handle each obstacle with calm precision stirred a deep respect in him. He noticed the subtle shifts in her demeanor, the way she assessed every movement, calculated risks, and maintained perfect form. Unlike the other cadets, she never rushed, never panicked, never showed a hint of frustration. Eli realized this was no ordinary student. Blake's frustration grew with each flawless maneuver. "How is she doing that?" he muttered under his breath. He replayed the morning in his mind, the swapped gear, the slick floor, the whispered distractions. None of it had fazed her. The arrogance that had once fueled his pranks was now tainted with irritation. His ego demanded control, and he couldn't reconcile it with the calm composure of the new girl. During lunch, the cafeteria became another battleground. Blake and his friends orchestrated a subtle social test, pushing trays too close, pumping shoulders, whispering jokes. The usual targets would flinch, yell, or complain, standard responses that reinforced hierarchy. Sam, however, simply moved with grace around the obstacles, kept her voice steady when asked to repeat instructions, and maintained composure while eating. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Blake's crew, whose laughter now seemed forced, uncertain. Small details did not escape Sam's notice. She cataloged the cadets' behavior, who joined in the harassment enthusiastically, who hesitated, and who quietly observed without participating. She noted which cadets sought approval from Blake, which ones acted independently, and which were genuinely conflicted about the morality of the pranks. Her observations were silent, thorough, and meticulous, a mental record that would inform every decision she made in the coming days. By mid-afternoon, the first real confrontation occurred. Blake, growing desperate to assert dominance, deliberately blocked Sam during a tactical maneuver drill, forcing her to stumble. "You think you're better than us?" he sneered. "Let's see how you handle real pressure." Cadets around them snickered, expecting the situation to escalate. But Sam didn't flinch. Instead, she subtly adjusted her stance, shifted her weight, and used the force against him to maintain balance. Blake ended up off-center, nearly losing his footing, while Sam barely broke stride. Eli's respect deepened. The subtle display wasn't just skill. It was a demonstration of strategy and control. Unlike the cadets who relied on brute strength, Sam's movements were precise, efficient, and deliberate. Every action had a purpose, and every outcome was calculated. It was no longer a question of physical ability. This was tactical mastery. Later, during a lecture on combat ethics, Sam observed again, not just the exercises, but how cadets interacted socially. Blake's crew whispered and snickered, but others, like Eli, watched silently, conflicted between loyalty to peers and understanding the moral weight of their actions. Sam's silent vigilance allowed her to see the nuances in behavior that would otherwise go unnoticed. Leadership, she realized, wasn't just about commanding exercises, it was about understanding character. By the evening, the first week had passed with tension and curiosity building. Blake's attempts to intimidate Sam had failed spectacularly, and his pride was bruised. The other cadets were unsettled, unsure whether her skills were natural or honed in ways they couldn't comprehend. Sam, meanwhile, remained calm and composed, her mind processing every interaction, every subtle detail, every character trait observed. She was readying herself for the next phase, a point at which observation would turn into action if necessary. As the cadets returned to their dorms, whispering and replaying the day's events, Sam retreated to her own room. She unpacked methodically, her movements smooth and precise. She allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The cadets had shown their first tendencies: arrogance, cruelty, hesitation, empathy. It had all been catalogued. The seeds of future lessons had been planted. And as the night settled over Fort Liberty, the fog rolling in from the surrounding forests, Sam prepared mentally for what would come next. The first prank had failed, but the game had only just begun. Outside, Blake paced the courtyard, muttering about the untouchable new girl. He had no idea that the calm figure in our dorm was not only observing him but analyzing, planning, and preparing for the day when the tables would turn. The cadets at Fort Liberty had believed themselves in control, unaware that their new peer was a Navy SEAL, a master of observation, strategy, and combat, waiting for the precise moment to reveal just how wrong they were about her. By the time the lights went out across the campus, one truth was clear. The first phase had ended, but the real test for cadets and their assumptions was only beginning. Sam had survived her first week, not by fighting, but by watching, learning, and staying calm under pressure. And the cadets who had mocked her? They had no idea how much danger lurked beneath her quiet exterior. The third week at Fort Liberty Military Academy began with a crisp dawn. The air was cold, tinged with the smell of dew-soaked earth, and the distant hum of drill commands filled the parade ground. Cadets lined up in perfect formation, boots pounding with military precision. Samantha Walker, known simply as Sam, stepped into the formation, her posture flawless, her face serene. Nothing about her movements betrayed the tension simmering among the cadets who had tried, and failed, to intimidate her in the previous week. Blake Turner's irritation had grown into an obsession. The new girl had not only ignored their pranks, but had outperformed almost everyone in drills and tactical exercises. Rope climbs, precision running, marksmanship exercises, Sam executed every task with near-perfect timing. Blake's friends whispered among themselves, frustrated, while the other cadets watched in awe and growing confusion. During the morning obstacle course, Blake decided to escalate. He instructed two cadets to subtly trip Sam during the rope climb, a move designed to test her reaction and perhaps finally expose her as ordinary. But Sam anticipated the interference before it even occurred. She shifted her weight mid-swing, landing with balance that kept her from losing a step. The cadets who tried to trip her stumbled instead, losing time and drawing scorn from the instructors. Sam's calm precision unnerved everyone. Her actions were measured, deliberate, and unerringly perfect. Eli Martinez watched from the sidelines, increasingly conflicted. He had initially assumed Sam was just another overconfident cadet who would eventually falter under pressure. But her calmness, her control, her ability to adapt instantly to every challenge suggested otherwise. Something about her presence demanded respect, though it was not the kind of respect Blake and his cronies were used to commanding. Eli couldn't help but feel a mixture of admiration and apprehension, as if he were witnessing someone operating on a level far beyond ordinary human capability. By mid-morning, the Academy's instructors began to take notice. Sam's performance exceeded expectations in every category: speed, precision, adaptability, and stamina. Even Colonel Reeves, from his office overlooking the training grounds, frowned thoughtfully. Her movements weren't just mechanical. They were calculated, like a chess player anticipating moves several steps ahead. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion, and no fear. She was calm under pressure in a way that suggested years of real-world experience. Back in the dormitories, Blake convened a secret meeting with his crew. "We can't let her get under our skin," he muttered, pacing. "She's too controlled, too perfect. We need to find a way to break her composure before she makes us look like amateurs." His friends nodded, but unease lingered. None of them had expected the new girl to react so calmly to harassment and interference. They began planning another prank, one designed to test her mental resilience, not just her physical skill. The afternoon brought a lecture on combat ethics and leadership, and Sam's attentiveness was apparent. She listened carefully to every word, making notes mentally about cadet reactions. Blake's group whispered and smirked, expecting her to falter under peer pressure or subtly mock the lessons. Yet Sam absorbed the information silently, occasionally glancing around the room to observe behavior, interactions, and the subtle power dynamics among the cadets. It was during this lecture that Eli began to understand the depth of Sam's presence. Unlike most cadets, who reacted instinctively or tried to perform for social approval, Sam was assessing everything. She was mapping character traits, identifying leaders and followers, and noting who exhibited cruelty, indecision, or moral integrity. Every action, every glance, every whispered conversation was a data point she was cataloging, preparing for the day when these observations might matter in ways Blake and his crew couldn't anticipate. After the lecture, a tactical field exercise was scheduled in the dense woods surrounding the academy. The cadets were divided into squads to locate and extract a simulated hostage while navigating natural obstacles. Sam's squad included some of Blake's crew, and tension crackled in the air. As the exercise began, Blake tried to undermine her subtly, directing others to move faster, creating distractions, and whispering misleading instructions to test her ability to maintain control. Sam moved with precision. She communicated clearly, directing her squad with calm authority. When one cadet attempted to take a shortcut that would have endangered the team, she intercepted him silently, guiding him back on course without raising her voice. Every action demonstrated not only physical skill, but mental clarity. She anticipated mistakes, neutralized them quietly, and ensured that her team moved efficiently toward the objective. Even Blake, frustrated by his inability to dominate her, was forced to follow her lead. The exercise culminated with a simulated hostage scenario. The team needed to extract the hostage while avoiding detection. Sam coordinated the approach flawlessly. She signaled silently, assessed threats, and positioned each cadet for maximum efficiency. The simulation required stealth, decision-making under pressure, and teamwork. While Blake's crew had initially scoffed at following her instructions, they began to understand the effectiveness of her leadership. By the end, Sam's squad successfully completed the mission with minimal errors, earning the highest marks of the day. As evening fell, cadets returned to the campus, exhausted and reflective. Blake, his pride bruised, seethed silently. "She's unreal," he muttered under his breath. "How does she do everything perfectly? It's like she's not even human." His friends nodded, though fear and respect were slowly seeping in. They realized that Sam's calmness wasn't arrogance or luck. It was mastery, honed through years of training can real-world experience. In her dorm room, Sam allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection. The day had provided more insight than she could have hoped for. Blake's crew had revealed tendencies of arrogance, impatience, and cruelty, while other cadets displayed empathy, hesitation, and integrity. Every detail she observed would inform her next actions. She wasn't here to humiliate anyone. Her mission was to assess character, ethics, and leadership under stress. But she was prepared to act if the cadets pushed past moral boundaries or endangered themselves or others. Meanwhile, the other cadets whispered in their rooms. The new girl had exceeded everyone's expectations, performing flawlessly in ways that were impossible to ignore. Fear mixed with admiration, confusion with respect. Blake's frustration deepened, his ego bruised daily by her calm dominance. He began to realize that this was no ordinary cadet, and that his assumptions about weakness had been dangerously misguided. Outside, the forest surrounding Fort Liberty rustled in the evening breeze, shadows stretching long across the parade grounds. Sam sat quietly by her window, reviewing her observations, preparing for what was to come. The calm before the storm was ending. The cadets were beginning to understand that the quiet new girl they had underestimated was not only skilled in combat, but also a master of strategy, observation, and leadership. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more tests of character, and more opportunities to reveal truths hidden beneath the surface of Fort Liberty's disciplined exterior. And as the fog thickened and the sun dipped below the horizon, one certainty remained. The cadets had no idea how formidable Sam Walker truly was, and the lessons she had planned for them were only just beginning. The night descended over Fort Liberty Military Academy like a heavy blanket. The forest surrounding the campus, usually serene during the day, transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Crickets chirped in the underbrush, and the occasional rustle of leaves hinted at the nocturnal life stirring in the woods. For the cadets, it was the culmination of a week-long survival and tactical exercise, designed to test endurance, leadership, and decision-making under stress. Samantha Sam Walker moved silently with her squad, every footfall deliberate, every movement calculated. Unlike the others, who whispered nervously and jostled for reassurance, Sam exuded control. Her calm was magnetic, forcing the squad to rely on her guidance instinctively. Even Blake Turner, the upper-class cadet who had made her his first target, followed her silently, frustrated that his plans to intimidate her had failed again. The mission was simple in description, but challenging in execution. Locate a simulated hostage hidden deep in the forest and extract them to a safe zone before the rest of the Academy's teams. Visibility was low, paths were treacherous, and the rules allowed for subtle interference among squads, a perfect opportunity for Blake to test Sam's patience. He waited for the right moment. Hours into the exercise, Blake and his crew decided to escalate. They had determined that minor pranks were ineffective. Sam was too composed to be rattled. So, during a narrow path flanked by dense trees, they blocked her progress deliberately, forcing her squad to navigate around obstacles while whispering taunts meant to provoke frustration. "You think you can lead us?" Blake hissed under his breath. "Let's see if you're really in charge." Sam didn't respond verbally. Her green eyes flicked toward the obstruction, quickly assessing the positions of Blake and the other cadets. Every subtle movement was recorded mentally. She calculated angles, distances, and potential threats, processing contingencies almost instinctively. Then, with smooth, fluid movements, she navigated the obstacles with her squad in perfect formation. Blake's crew stumbled, overextended, and nearly collided with trees. Sam's patience and precision transformed what could have been chaos into an orchestrated, flawless advance. The cadets were tense, whispering anxiously. Eli Martinez, observing from the rear, could barely believe what he was witnessing. while the others relied on brute force or impulsive reactions. Sam's calm allowed her to anticipate and neutralize interference without confrontation. Her tactical awareness was not just skill, it was mastery. And tonight, in the dark of the forest, the difference between an ordinary cadet and a SEAL became terrifyingly clear. The real test came when Blake decided to take a more aggressive approach. He aimed to physically intimidate Sam, attempting to push her off a narrow log bridge spanning a small ravine. "Step aside, new girl," he sneered. "You don't know how this works." He shoved her lightly, expecting her to stumble, expecting to provoke a reaction. But Sam's reflexes were instantaneous. She shifted her weight with a controlled pivot, absorbing the force without imbalance, and simultaneously guided Blake off-center using minimal contact, forcing him to regain his footing while maintaining her own stability. The move was subtle, almost elegant, yet utterly dominant. Blake froze, shock and humiliation washing over him. The other cadets nearby witnessed it, their eyes widening in disbelief. This was no ordinary counter. It was a precise demonstration of combat skill without aggression. "Careful, Blake," Sam whispered, calm and measured. "I suggest you reconsider your methods." Blake's mouth opened to retort, but no words came. The forest seemed to hold its breath. He realized, for the first time, that Sam's calmness wasn't weakness. It was control that could dominate any situation. Every prank, every attempt to unsettle her had failed spectacularly. The squad pressed on. A creek blocked their path, water rushing over slippery rocks. Blake's crew expected Sam to falter or panic, but she moved with a balance and steadiness that made even the strongest cadets appear clumsy. She guided her team across safely, stepping only where stability could be assured, signaling silently when someone's footing was insecure. Hours into the night, the squad reached the hostage, a mannequin placed deep within the forest. While other squads fumbled and argued over extraction strategy, Sam orchestrated the removal flawlessly. She positioned cadets, secured the mannequin, and led them back through the darkness with minimal noise, maintaining communication through subtle hand signals and nods. During the return, Blake attempted one last act of defiance. He made a sudden move, pretending to stumble intentionally to draw Sam off balance. But Sam anticipated the feint. With a controlled grip, she redirected his momentum and guided him safely forward, silently demonstrating the futility of his aggression. Fear and respect flickered across his face. He could no longer dismiss her as weak, ordinary, or inexperienced. Eli, walking beside Sam, felt a swell of admiration. He realized the depth of her training, the precision of her mind, and the patience required to manage such a tense situation. It wasn't just skill that made Sam extraordinary. It was her ability to maintain composure under provocation, to read intent and neutralize threats with minimal force, and to assert control while preserving integrity. By the time they returned to the academy, dawn was breaking. The forest, once ominous and threatening, now seemed tranquil. Sam's squad emerged victorious, completing the mission flawlessly. The instructors, watching from a distance, nodded in approval, noting the exceptional cohesion and efficiency of her team. Yet the true lesson extended beyond mere mission success. Blake's group, humiliated and shaken, had learned something crucial. Sam Walker was not someone to provoke. Her calmness was not passivity. It was mastery. The balance of power had shifted quietly but decisively. The cadets who once assumed dominance now understood, on some level, that they had underestimated her gravely. In the aftermath, back in the dormitories, whispers circulated like wildfire. "Did you see how she handled Blake?" One cadet murmured. "She didn't even raise her voice." Another added, She's different. I don't know what else to say." Fear, respect, and awe mingled in the hallways. Blake remained silent, brooding, his pride wounded, his assumptions shattered. Sam returned to her room, exhausted but composed. She methodically cleaned her equipment, checked her gear, and reviewed the night's events in her mind. Every cadet's reaction had been noted, every flaw and strength catalogued. Blake's arrogance, others' hesitation, Eli's emerging empathy. All were pieces in the puzzle she was quietly assembling. She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The first true confrontation had passed, and she had emerged unscathed, her authority established without aggression. Outside, the academy grounds were quiet, the forest stretching dark and silent. The cadets had survived their first night challenge, but none had yet grasped the full extent of the storm they had provoked. Sam Walker, the quiet transfer student, had revealed a fraction of her skill, leaving enough ambiguity to unsettle, enough control to inspire, and enough fear to ensure her next moves would be met with caution. Tomorrow promised further challenges, but Sam was ready. She had demonstrated, without cruelty, the consequences of misjudgment, and she had begun to teach lessons in discipline, strategy, and respect that Blake and his crew could not ignore. The night had been a subtle warning. Underestimate her at your peril. And as dawn crept over Fort Liberty, the cadets began to understand that the quiet new girl they had mocked was far more than she appeared. She was a force poised to test their limits in ways they could never have imagined. Morning broke over Fort Liberty Military Academy with a pale amber glow filtering through the dormitory windows. The events of the previous night hung over the cadets like a shadow, a mix of unease and whispered curiosity. Word of the silent force in the forest had spread quickly, some cadets unsure if it was rumor, others already shaken by the unmistakable display of skill they had witnessed. Blake Turner, pride wounded and ego bruised, had spent the night pacing, replaying every moment. He had been confronted by someone he could neither predict nor dominate, and that gnawed at him. The first assembly of the day was tense. Cadets shuffled into formation, whispers flowing under their breaths like an undercurrent of apprehension. Blake's crew avoided eye contact with Sam, who stood quietly, unassuming, yet emanating a calm authority that drew subtle attention. Unlike previous days, no one dared to provoke her. Even casual conversation seemed muted, replaced by a cautious silence. Sam observed, her green eyes scanning the crowd, cataloging reactions, noting tension and hesitation. She allowed herself to be a mystery a while longer, savoring the silent shift in dynamics. It was during tactical briefing that the confrontation occurred. Blake, frustrated and seeking to reclaim dominance, decided to force the issue. He stepped forward, his shoulders squared, jaw tight, attempting to project authority. "Walkers," he began, his voice louder than necessary. "I want an explanation. How is it that you've dominated every drill, every challenge, and yet act as if none of it matters? Are you hiding something?" The cadets held their breath. Eli, sensing escalation, shifted uncomfortably, unsure how this confrontation would unfold. Blake's friend smirked nervously, expecting Sam to falter, expecting her to react defensively. But Sam didn't flinch. She remained silent for a heartbeat, letting the tension build. Then, in a controlled voice that carried authority without aggression, she responded. "I am not hiding anything, Blake," she said evenly. "You assumed I was weak. That assumption, based on your arrogance, was incorrect. Everything you've witnessed has been a demonstration, not of power, but of discipline, strategy, and control. You've underestimated me, and now you understand the consequences of that misjudgment." The room fell silent. Blake's face flushed with embarrassment and fury. He opened his mouth, searching for a retort, but no words came. Sam's composure and clarity were unyielding, and the weight of her presence left him momentarily speechless. Cadets shifted uneasily in their formation, whispering among themselves. The dynamics of authority had subtly but irrevocably shifted. Colonel Reeves, who had entered the assembly quietly, now stepped forward. He had received a cryptic briefing from Washington the night before regarding a special candidate in the academy. Still unaware of the student's identity, he observed the scene carefully. Sam turned her gaze toward him, maintaining perfect posture and calm demeanor. Reeves's eyes narrowed slightly. Curiosity piqued. He had a sense that the Pentagon's special candidate might be here, and judging by the display of skill and the reaction of the cadets, he suspected she was no ordinary student. Blake, unable to mask his growing frustration, finally asked the question on everyone's mind. "Who are you really?" His voice trembled with a mix of anger and awe. Sam inhaled slowly, her posture unwavering. "Lieutenant Samantha Walker," she revealed, her voice precise and deliberate. "United States Navy SEAL, Special Tactics Division. Every maneuver, every observation, every subtle action you've seen over the past week has been executed within the framework of my training. I am here under a Pentagon directive to assess character, ethics, and leadership under pressure. You have been participants in an evaluation, whether you realize it or not." A collective gasp rippled through the cadets. Blake's jaw dropped. Disbelief and humiliation washed over him. The magnitude of what he had underestimated sank in. The quiet new girl, whom he had mocked and attempted to dominate, was a decorated combat specialist, trained to survive and excel in life-or-death situations. Eli felt a mix of awe and relief. He had sensed there was more to Sam than anyone else realized, and now the truth was undeniable. Respect surged within him, tempered with the realization that he had witnessed the behavior and thought patterns of someone trained to perform under extreme pressure. Sam's gaze swept the formation, making eye contact with each cadet. Her tone was calm, yet authoritative. "This is not about punishment," she continued. "It is about awareness. Leadership is not measured by intimidation or cruelty. Strength is not proven by who can dominate others physically or socially. True strength is discipline, ethical judgment, and the ability to remain composed when faced with adversity." Blake's cheeks burned with embarrassment. The pride that had driven him to haze her now felt hollow. He had been outmatched, not just physically, but strategically and mentally. Sam's demonstration had stripped away the illusion of superiority he had assumed over new cadets, forcing him to confront his own arrogance. Colonel Reeves stepped forward, his face unreadable. He addressed the cadets formally, acknowledging the unusual circumstances. "Lieutenant Walker has been placed here by the Pentagon for a covert evaluation," he stated. "Her presence has been a test, not only of her abilities, but of your reactions under stress, your judgment, and your capacity for ethical leadership. Consider this a rare opportunity to learn from someone extraordinary." Murmurs spread through the cadets. Some shifted nervously, realizing how wrong they had been in their assumptions. Blake remained silent, absorbing the humiliation and the weight of the lesson. Even his friends, who had followed him unquestioningly, now regarded Sam with a mixture of fear and respect. Sam continued, her tone calm but firm. "From this point forward, I will serve as a guide and mentor during exercises. Mistakes will be corrected, not to punish, but to prepare you for the challenges that real leadership and combat demand. Those who choose cruelty or arrogance over judgment will face consequences. Those who show discipline, integrity, and teamwork will excel. The choice is yours." The cadets exchanged glances, the weight of her words settling heavily upon them. Blake's ego bristled, yet even he could not deny the truth. Sam's calm authority had dismantled his assumptions and forced him to confront the limitations of his previous behavior. Eli, quietly proud, felt reassured that the presence of someone like Sam could elevate the training experience, even for the most stubborn cadets. After the assembly, Sam returned to her dormitory, leaving the cadets in stunned silence. Blake lingered behind, watching her retreat. Pride and resentment warred within him, but beneath it all, an unmistakable recognition took hold. Sam Walker was a force beyond anyone's casual understanding, and he would need to adapt quickly if he hoped to regain relevance in her presence. By the time the evening drills began, the cadets had begun to internalize the first real lesson Sam had imparted. Underestimate no one, respect discipline, and recognize the power of controlled authority. The forest, the obstacles, and the training yard were no longer just a backdrop for exercises. They had become arenas for learning strategy, ethics, and leadership under pressure. For Sam, the reveal was merely a step in a larger plan. Her mission was not complete. It was only beginning. The cadets had learned her identity, her capabilities, and the weight of her authority. The coming days would test them further, pushing them beyond assumptions, arrogance, and habitual behaviors. And as she prepared for the next phase, Sam allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The cadets had seen her, understood the consequences of misjudgment, and were ready, whether they knew it or not, for the lessons that lay ahead. Outside, the sun dipped low behind the academy buildings, casting long shadows across the grounds. The cadets had been humbled, challenged, and awakened to the reality of true leadership. Blake Turner had learned, in a single morning, that the quiet new girl he had once mocked was someone he could neither control nor predict. Sam Walker, the SEAL combat expert, had taken the first step in transforming not only the cadets, but the entire culture of Fort Liberty Military Academy. The next morning at Fort Liberty Military Academy began with an unusual stillness. The cadets, who once had laughed, whispered, and plotted pranks against Samantha Walker, now moved quietly through the corridors. The reveal of her identity as a Navy SEAL and the events of the previous week had changed the dynamics of the academy. Even Blake Turner, normally brimming with arrogance, walked with a hesitant awareness, careful not to draw attention or provoke her. Sam stood in the training yard, her uniform immaculate, her posture commanding yet approachable. She had been assigned as a temporary field instructor, a rare privilege granted by Colonel Reeves, who recognized the unique value she could bring to the cadets' development. Her role was not merely to train them physically, but to instill discipline, respect, ethical judgment, and teamwork, qualities that often eluded even the most skilled cadets. The morning began with a standard physical drill, but the emphasis was different this time. Sam demonstrated each movement carefully, explaining the reasoning behind proper form, efficiency, and tactical advantage. Cadets who had previously relied on brute force now struggled to adapt, realizing that strength alone was insufficient. Sam's voice was calm and measured, never condescending, yet her presence demanded attention. Every word carried authority, every gesture reinforced her lessons. Blake and his crew initially resisted, their pride bristling against correction. But even they could not deny the logic behind her instructions. When she demonstrated proper tactical movement during an obstacle drill, Blake tried to mimic her technique, only to falter repeatedly. Sam moved beside him silently, offering subtle adjustments without criticism, allowing him to feel improvement without humiliation. The lesson was clear. True leadership came not from arrogance, but from guidance and integrity. Eli Martinez, once a cautious observer, became an eager participant. He quickly absorbed Sam's teachings, asking questions about strategy, coordination, and situational awareness. Unlike Blake, Eli's willingness to learn earned him quiet praise from Sam, who subtly encouraged cadets who displayed curiosity and initiative. Her method was not about favoritism, but about identifying potential leaders and nurturing their abilities. By mid-morning, Sam introduced a tactical exercise designed to test both physical skill and teamwork. Cadets were divided into squads, each tasked with navigating a challenging course while completing specific objectives. This time, the emphasis was on coordination, communication, and trust. No cadet could succeed alone. Every decision required collaboration. Blake, initially resistant, struggled with the concept. He was used to commanding by intimidation and relying on his own abilities. But as the exercise progressed, even he began to see the value in cooperation. When his squad encountered a simulated obstacle, Sam observed silently, allowing the cadets to navigate the problem together. She intervened only when necessary, guiding them toward effective strategies rather than dictating every step. The exercise highlighted weaknesses and strengths alike. Cadets who had previously been passive were encouraged to take initiative, while those prone to arrogance learned the importance of listening and adjusting. Sam's approach balanced discipline with opportunity, creating an environment in which cadets could grow without fear of ridicule. Her subtle guidance transformed mistakes into teaching moments, reinforcing lessons in resilience, adaptability, and ethical decision-making. Lunch offered another opportunity for observation. Cadets moved in small groups, discussing strategies, sharing insights, and reflecting on the morning's exercise. Sam circulated quietly, listening, occasionally interjecting with a question or suggestion that prompted deeper analysis. Even Blake's group, previously dismissive, engaged in meaningful discussion. The cadets were beginning to internalize the principles she had demonstrated. Strength alone was not enough. Leadership required insight, patience, and collaboration. The afternoon brought marksmanship training. Sam demonstrated techniques for accuracy, control, and focus under pressure. Cadets struggled initially, their competitive instincts causing tension and mistakes. Sam moved among them, offering corrections, adjusting posture, and guiding breathing patterns. Her patience and clarity were remarkable, allowing each cadet to improve without feeling embarrassed. By the end of the session, even Blake's group had achieved significant improvement, their respect for her authority growing with every successful shot. As the day progressed, Sam introduced moral and ethical dilemmas within tactical scenarios. Cadets were confronted with choices that tested integrity, teamwork, and judgment under stress. The exercises were designed not to punish failure, but to illuminate character. Cadets learned that true leadership involved making difficult decisions, considering consequences, and balancing ambition with responsibility. Mistakes became opportunities for reflection, and success was measured not by speed or dominance, but by thoughtful execution and ethical conduct. By evening, the cadets had transformed. The previously fractured, competitive atmosphere had shifted toward mutual support and accountability. Eli felt a sense of pride in his own progress, and even Blake, though reluctant, acknowledged internally that Sam's guidance was invaluable. The cadets had begun to see each other differently, recognizing strengths and weaknesses not as grounds for ridicule, but as opportunities for collaboration and growth. Sam's final exercise of the day was a team-based navigation challenge through dense forest terrain. The objective was to locate checkpoints while maintaining communication and cohesion. Cadets who had once competed selfishly now worked together, sharing information and supporting one another. Sam observed from a distance, noting efficiency, adaptability, and interpersonal dynamics. She remained silent, allowing the cadets to internalize lessons and develop leadership from within, rather than imposing authority overtly. When the exercise concluded, cadets gathered for debriefing. Sam praised achievements while offering constructive feedback on areas needing improvement. Her tone was calm but firm, reinforcing discipline without fear, emphasizing growth over punishment. Cadets listened intently, absorbing the wisdom she imparted. By the time the session ended, even the most resistant cadets had begun to respect her not only for her skill, but for her ability to teach with authority, fairness, and insight. Colonel Reeves observed quietly from the sidelines, impressed by the transformation. Sam's methods had achieved what traditional drills and authority could not. She had reshaped behavior, instilled discipline, and fostered a culture of respect and teamwork. The cadets were learning not just how to perform physically, but how to think critically, act ethically, and lead with both skill and integrity. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the academy grounds, Sam returned to her dorm room. She reflected on the day's lessons, noting which cadets showed promise, which required further guidance, and how the dynamics within the group had shifted. Blake, humbled yet quietly determined, had shown the first signs of genuine self-reflection. Eli had emerged as a thoughtful observer and participant, proving that willingness to learn often mattered more than raw ability. Outside, the academy was calm, the forest bordering the campus dark and silent. The cadets had survived a day of rigorous training, but they had also learned an essential lesson: discipline, respect, and ethical judgment were the foundations of leadership, and brute force alone would never suffice. Sam had begun to reshape the culture of Fort Liberty, not through intimidation or aggression, but through skill, observation, and deliberate guidance. As she prepared for the next day, Sam allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The cadets were responding, learning, and growing. Blake's crew, once overconfident and disrespectful, was beginning to understand the importance of collaboration and humility. Others, like Eli, were developing insight and initiative. The seeds of change had been planted, and Sam knew that the coming challenges would continue to test the cadets and reveal the strength of the lessons she had imparted. The night descended over Fort Liberty, and the academy was silent. But beneath the surface, the cadets were transforming. Their assumptions, arrogance, and superficial judgments had been challenged, replaced by a new understanding of leadership, skill, and discipline. Sam Walker, the SEAL combat expert who had once been underestimated, had begun her most important mission yet, shaping the next generation of leaders at Fort Liberty Military Academy. The sun rose blood-red over Fort Liberty Military Academy, painting the campus and surrounding forests in an intense glow. Today was unlike any other. Operation Iron Resolve, a week-long, high-intensity tactical exercise, was set to begin. It was the ultimate test of endurance, teamwork, strategy, and leadership. Cadets were briefed the previous evening. Failure was possible, and the cost of mistakes would be immediate, though simulated. Samantha Walker, standing at the front of the formation, exuded a quiet authority that demanded attention. She had orchestrated the day's plan, carefully considering each cadet's strengths, weaknesses, and potential for leadership. Blake Turner, still simmering with pride and stubbornness, glanced nervously at her. Even he knew that Sam's involvement meant this would be no ordinary exercise. This would test them in every way possible. "Today is about more than skill," Sam began, her voice steady but firm. "It's about judgment, teamwork, and leadership under pressure. Every decision you make will have consequences. Every action, every reaction matters. The lessons you've learned over the past weeks will be challenged, and only those who apply them effectively will succeed." Cadets were divided into squads, each tasked with navigating hostile terrain, completing objectives, and locating hidden targets. Unlike previous exercises, this one included unpredictable environmental challenges, simulated threats, and real-time strategic adjustments, all designed to force the cadets to think critically while under stress. As the squads moved into the dense forest, tension ran high. Cadets whispered, nerves palpable, scanning the underbrush for simulated threats. Blake's squad, still struggling with humility, attempted to assert control prematurely, barking orders without consulting team members. Within minutes, mistakes began to compound: miscommunications, missed checkpoints, and near accidents. Sam observed from a concealed position, cataloging the errors. Then, with a subtle whistle and a hand signal, she guided Blake's squad toward a safer path. Instead of commanding, she demonstrated. She positioned cadets, coordinated movements, and showed the impact of communication and strategic planning. Slowly, Blake began to see the value of cooperation over impulsive action, though pride still flared with every correction. Meanwhile, Eli's squad moved with impressive cohesion. He had internalized much of Sam's instruction, anticipating hazards, communicating effectively, and supporting teammates. Sam's observation confirmed her expectations. Those willing to learn and adapt were beginning to excel, while arrogance and impatience were still liabilities. The first real test came when cadets encountered a simulated ambush. Smoke bombs, timed alarms, and artificial obstacles created confusion and stress. Cadets who panicked tripped over routes, misinterpreted signals, or shouted orders in disarray. Sam, positioned strategically nearby, allowed the chaos to unfold initially. Her principle was simple. Mistakes are only meaningful if cadets experience and correct them themselves. When a cadet strayed dangerously close to a hazard zone, Sam intervened with precise authority. She moved silently, guiding the cadet away without confrontation, demonstrating situational awareness, restraint, and control. The subtlety of her action left the cadets stunned. Even in chaos, she maintained clarity, composure, and command. By mid-afternoon, the exercise escalated further. Cadets faced river crossings, cliffside climbs, and simulated enemy engagements that required split-second decision-making. Blake's squad, now partially humbled, began to rely on his teammates' observations rather than attempting solo heroics. Mistakes decreased, but tension remained high. Every decision had to balance speed with caution, aggression with discretion. Sam's presence was constant but unobtrusive. She intervened only when necessary, correcting errors silently or offering a brief demonstration of technique. Her approach reinforced the principle that leadership was earned through competence, respect, and sound judgment, not intimidation or ego. By now, even Blake's crew began to accept her authority, though grudgingly. The climax of the exercise arrived as cadets encountered the final objective, a simulated enemy compound requiring infiltration, reconnaissance, and extraction. Team coordination was crucial. One misstep could trigger alarms and fail the mission. Cadets moved cautiously, following Sam's subtle guidance, signals, and the principles she had instilled. Blake's squad led the approach, their earlier arrogance replaced by calculated caution. Every movement reflected lessons learned: communication, situational awareness, and trust in teammates. Sam observed silently from a high vantage point, cataloging successes and errors, noting the cadets' growth. The infiltration was not without challenges. Unexpected obstacles appeared: barricades, simulated enemy patrols, and false alarms. Cadets hesitated, made minor mistakes, and quickly adapted. Sam's training shone through. They responded as a unit, relying on coordination, critical thinking, and mutual support rather than impulsive individual action. Finally, the extraction of the simulated hostage tested the cadets' endurance and strategy under extreme stress. Blake's squad, once prone to mistakes and miscommunication, moved efficiently, guided by Sam's methods. They navigated the terrain, communicated with precision, and executed the extraction without triggering simulated alarms. The difference from their first attempts at drills and exercises was stark. They had transformed under Sam's guidance. Eli's squad, already cohesive, demonstrated exceptional efficiency, completing objectives with minimal error. Sam allowed them autonomy, stepping in only to correct minor mistakes. Her methodology had produced leaders capable of independent action while maintaining unity and discipline. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the cadets returned to the academy, exhausted but triumphant. Operation Iron Resolve had tested every skill they possessed: endurance, judgment, strategy, and collaboration. Sam's guidance had been subtle, yet impactful, shaping cadets into cohesive units capable of facing high-pressure situations with calm, calculated responses. Colonel Reeves observed the return, impressed by the transformation. Cadets who had been arrogant, impulsive, or dismissive were now thoughtful, disciplined, and respectful. The lessons Sam had imparted extended beyond physical training. They had internalized principles of leadership, ethics, and situational awareness that would guide them long after the exercise concluded. Back in the dormitory, cadets debriefed with Sam. She highlighted successes, acknowledged growth, and addressed mistakes with calm authority. Leadership, she said, is not about individual brilliance or dominance. It is about guiding, supporting, and making decisions that benefit the team while upholding integrity. Every challenge you face today reflected the principles you've been learning. Remember them. Apply them. Refine them. Blake, once brimming with arrogance, nodded quietly. His expression reflected humility, tempered with renewed determination. For the first time, he recognized that authority and leadership were earned through discipline, ethics, and the ability to act under pressure, not by force or intimidation. Eli, beaming with pride, understood the depth of the transformation, not just in himself, but in his peers. Sam had taught them lessons beyond the tactical: resilience, empathy, judgment, and the value of trust. The cadets had grown under pressure, and Sam's influence would remain, subtly shaping their decisions for years to come. As night fell, the academy was quiet. The cadets, physically exhausted and mentally alert, had experienced the pinnacle of their training under Sam's guidance. Operation Iron Resolve had not only tested them, it had revealed the strengths and weaknesses of every individual, reshaped group dynamics, and solidified Sam's authority as mentor and leader. From her vantage point in the dormitory, Sam observed the grounds. She allowed herself a brief, satisfied smile. The cadets had faced the ultimate test. They had applied lessons in discipline, teamwork, and ethical judgment under extreme pressure. The transformation was evident. Arrogance replaced by humility, impulsiveness replaced by strategy, disunity replaced by collaboration. Her mission at Fort Liberty was nearing a pivotal point. Tomorrow promised reflection, assessment, and the next steps in building leaders capable of facing real challenges with courage, skill, and ethical awareness. But for now, the academy rested under the stars. A place forever changed by the presence of a single, extraordinary cadet, Samantha Walker, SEAL combat expert, mentor, and teacher of lessons far beyond ordinary comprehension. The dawn over Fort Liberty Military Academy was crisp and golden, illuminating the campus with a serene clarity that contrasted sharply with the intensity of the previous week. Cadets moved through the grounds with a newfound sense of purpose. Gone were the whispers, the underhanded pranks, and the subtle posturing for dominance. In their place was quiet respect, a deeper awareness of themselves, and recognition of the lessons imparted by Samantha Walker. Sam stood on the parade ground, her posture commanding yet approachable, observing the cadets with a keen eye. Operation Iron Resolve had concluded, and the results were undeniable. The cadets had transformed. They moved with coordination, confidence, and discipline. Mistakes were fewer, corrected quickly, and teamwork had replaced competition as the default mode of interaction. Sam allowed herself a moment of satisfaction, knowing her mission at the academy had reached a defining moment. Colonel Reeves approached, his expression unreadable at first, but then softening with genuine admiration. "Lieutenant Walker," he said, his tone formal but appreciative, "what you've accomplished here in such a short time is extraordinary. The cadets are not only more capable physically, but their judgment, leadership, and ethical awareness have grown exponentially. You've done more than train them. You've reshaped the culture of Fort Liberty. Sam inclined her head respectfully. Thank you, sir. My goal has been to prepare them not only to excel in drills, but to understand responsibility, discipline, and leadership under pressure. These lessons will serve them long after they leave the academy. Blake Turner stood nearby, silent at first, reflecting on the transformation not just of himself, but of those around him. The arrogance that had driven him to mock, to provoke, and to dominate had been replaced by humility and a willingness to learn. He had seen firsthand the power of calm, disciplined authority. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter than usual, but carrying sincerity. Lieutenant Walker, he began, I underestimated you, and I underestimated what it means to lead. I realize now that leadership isn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about knowing when to act, when to guide, and how to respect those around you. Thank you. Sam nodded slightly, acknowledging his words without a hint of condescension. Recognition of mistakes is the first step toward improvement. Blake, growth comes from reflection and action, not pride or stubbornness. I hope you continue to apply these lessons in the days ahead. Eli Martinez, standing slightly behind Blake, smiled quietly. He had observed the change not only in his peers, but in himself. He had embraced Sam's lessons, allowing curiosity, adaptability, and respect to guide his actions. He felt a sense of pride and responsibility, understanding that these principles were now part of his character, ready to shape his decisions in future challenges. The cadets gathered for the final ceremony of Operation Iron Resolve. Sam addressed them one last time, her calm, authoritative presence commanding attention. You have faced the ultimate test of your training, she said. You have navigated challenges, learned to trust each other, and demonstrated the principles of leadership under pressure. Today, you are not just cadets, you are leaders in the making. Remember that strength without discipline is empty. Authority without integrity is meaningless. And teamwork without respect is fragile. She paused, letting her words resonate. Leadership is earned, not given. Excellence is achieved, not assumed. And courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Carry these lessons with you, not just in drills, but in life beyond Fort Liberty. Applause rippled through the cadets, but it was quiet and measured, respectful rather than performative. They understood the weight of her words, the depth of her experience, and the value of the lessons imparted. Sam's influence was evident in every posture, every gaze, every subtle display of confidence tempered by humility. Colonel Reeves approached Sam again, presenting her with a formal commendation, recognizing her service and extraordinary contribution to the Academy. For leadership, mentorship, and dedication to developing the next generation of officers, this commendation is awarded to Lieutenant Samantha Walker, he announced, the cadets standing at attention. Sam accepted with quiet grace. Thank you, sir, she replied, her voice calm and composed. It was a moment of recognition, but not one of ego. Her satisfaction came from the transformation she had cultivated in others, not from accolades or praise. Blake's crew, once skeptical and resistant, now viewed her with genuine admiration. The lessons of humility, teamwork, and discipline had been seared into their consciousness through direct experience. They had learned that power without guidance was meaningless, and arrogance without skill was dangerous. Even Blake, who had struggled most to accept her authority, now carried a newfound respect that would inform his leadership going forward. As the cadets dispersed to their quarters, Sam took a moment to walk the grounds quietly. The sun cast long shadows across the parade yard, highlighting the neat rows of cadets who moved with purpose and precision. She observed interactions, cadets supporting one another, offering advice, and practicing communication skills she had taught. The change was subtle but profound, and it affirmed the impact of her work. In her dormitory, Sam reflected on the journey. The past weeks had tested patience, observation, and strategic thinking. She had navigated initial hostility, demonstrated skill without aggression, and cultivated leadership without imposing dominance. The cadets had been challenged to confront their assumptions, overcome arrogance, and embrace collaboration. And they had risen to the occasion, each in their own way. Eli entered quietly, sitting across from Sam. "You've changed everything," he said softly. "Not just our skills, but the way we think, the way we act. I don't think we'll ever forget what we've learned from you." Sam smiled faintly. "That is the goal, Eli. Lessons are only valuable if they endure. You've all faced challenges that tested your limits, physically, mentally, and ethically. Remember that true strength is measured not by personal achievement alone, but by how you lift others, how you make decisions under pressure, and how you uphold integrity when no one is watching." Blake appeared behind Eli, hesitant. "Lieutenant Walker, I know I can't undo the mistakes I made, or the arrogance I carried, but I want to do better. I want to lead with the principles you've taught us." His voice, though low, carried sincerity. Sam nodded, her eyes meeting his. "Change begins with recognition and commitment. Actions, not words, will define your growth. I have no doubt that you are capable of applying these lessons. Blake, if you continue to choose reflection over ego and discipline over pride." The cadets filed out for the evening, leaving Sam alone in the quiet dormitory. She allowed herself a brief moment of introspection. The weeks had been intense, demanding, and strategically complex. She had navigated interpersonal dynamics, tested leadership under pressure, and imparted lessons that would resonate long after her tenure at Fort Liberty. Yet, her mission had never been about accolades or recognition. It had been about transformation, for herself, for the cadets, and for the academy as a whole. Outside, the academy was calm under the stars. The forest bordering the grounds was silent, as though reflecting the peace that had descended upon the cadets' minds. They had been tested, challenged, and shaped under the guidance of an extraordinary individual, Samantha Walker, Navy SEAL and mentor extraordinaire. Her presence had left an indelible mark, and her lessons would influence not just their performance at Fort Liberty, but the character and leadership they would carry throughout their lives. As the final night settled, Sam looked toward the horizon. The cadets were ready, not just physically, but mentally and ethically. She had completed her mission at the academy, transforming raw talent, arrogance, and inexperience into disciplined, ethical, and capable leaders. And though her time at Fort Liberty would eventually end, the legacy of her influence would endure, shaping the next generation with lessons of courage, integrity, and unwavering discipline. In the quiet of her room, Sam allowed herself a rare smile. The cadets had learned, grown, and changed. Fort Liberty would never be the same, and neither would the cadets who had once underestimated the quiet new girl. She had proven, beyond doubt, that true strength was measured not in brute force, but in wisdom, discipline, and the ability to inspire growth in others. And as the night deepened over the academy, one thing was certain: Samantha Walker's presence had left a permanent mark. A legacy of resilience, leadership, and unwavering courage that would echo through Fort Liberty for years to come.